That night, dinner was as usual. The room was warmed by the soft light of the lamp hanging over the table, where the aroma of fresh pasta mingled with the sound of children's laughter. It was one of those moments when everything seemed in harmony, until my 6-year-old daughter, with her big curious eyes, looked at her older sister and said something that froze time. "You're not part of the family," she declared, with the cutting innocence that only a child can have. Silence filled the space between us. My wife's cutlery fell onto the plate with a light clink. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just one of those nonsensical phrases that children tend to say. But the look in my daughter's eyes, fixed and serious, made me realize there was something more. During dinner, each bite felt like it weighed a ton. Everyone was waiting for someone to break the ice, but the little one never took her eyes off her sister. My wife, trying to lighten the mood, asked the eldest how her day at school was. But the question went unanswered. Everyone felt that something deeper was about to emerge. "Why did you say that, dear?" I finally asked, trying to keep my voice calm. There was a moment of hesitation, and then my younger daughter released the truth with the simplicity of a child showing a drawing done at school. "I heard you and Mummy talking about the adoption." My hands went cold. A secret we had kept so carefully was now exposed, but not in the way we had planned. And this is where things get interesting, I thought, realizing it was time to face this reality. My wife and I exchanged a look, one of those that says 1,000 words without uttering a single one. We had always known we would have this conversation, but we didn't expect it to be so soon, nor in this manner. I looked at my eldest daughter, who now seemed so small and vulnerable, and felt the urgent need to protect her. I took a deep breath and started to explain with a slightly trembling voice that love does not depend on blood. That family is built with bonds of affection and care, and that her sister was indeed part of us in every way that matters. "A lot of people feel exactly that, even without knowing," I said, hoping the words would find a safe place in their hearts. The eldest looked at me, still processing everything, and it was at that moment I realized the importance of being honest about our stories. It's worth reflecting on this, I thought, as I saw understanding beginning to form in her eyes. The tension slowly dissipated, and dinner continued, now with a new understanding hovering over us. The children started laughing again, and the sound of cutlery began to fill the room. I knew this conversation was only the beginning, but it was also a relief to know that we had taken the first step together. That night, as I was putting the children to bed, my eldest daughter hugged me tightly, as if to ensure that nothing had changed. And indeed, nothing had changed, only that love had become more conscious and stronger. If this story touched you, perhaps it is time to reflect on the bonds that really matter in your life. And if you want to follow more stories like this one, there's already another one in the cards. Good night. The next morning, the house was calm. The sun entered through the windows, casting soft shadows on the walls. While preparing coffee, my mind wandered over the events of the previous night. Questions arose, and I wondered if we had handled it in the best possible way. It was one of those moments when life reminds us of the complexity of human feelings and how children, with their simplicity, can guide us to deep reflections. My wife walked into the kitchen, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but with a glint of determination. "We need to talk more about this with them, in a way they can understand," she said softly, as she picked up 2 cups of coffee. I nodded in agreement. We knew that, although the conversation had started, there was still much to be said and, more importantly, much to be heard. Breakfast was more relaxed than dinner. The children were excited, as if the conversation from the night before had somehow lifted an invisible weight. While we ate, my oldest daughter, with a shy smile, asked if we could visit the park after school. "Sure," I responded, happy to see that she was returning to being the cheerful child she always was. On the way to school, my wife and I discussed how to make conversations about adoption a natural part of our daily lives. We wanted our daughters to grow up understanding that love has no barriers and that family is a much broader concept than one might imagine. "Have you thought about this before?" she asked, and I realized that, although we always had this vision, perhaps we hadn't expressed it with the clarity the children needed. In the afternoon at the park, while the children ran and played, my wife and I watched from a distance, sitting on a bench under the shade of a tree. We talked about how we often underestimate children's ability to understand complex concepts. If you've ever experienced something similar, You know what I'm talking about, she commented. And I found myself reflecting on how many adults also struggle to comprehend the depth of love that isn't tied by blood. As the hours passed, my oldest daughter approached, tired from playing so much, and sat down beside us. I took her hand and with a smile asked if everything was okay. She looked at me with her big eyes and said, "I like being your daughter." My heart warmed and I knew we were on the right path. "And I love being your father," I replied, feeling that in that moment, all uncertainties had dissipated. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, my wife and I sat on the couch, exhausted but grateful. The journey that had started with a simple question at the dinner table had led us to a deeper understanding of who we were as a family. This point deserves our attention, I thought, remembering that great transformations begin with small conversations. Reflecting on the events of the past few days, I realized that every word spoken, every gesture of affection exchanged, had strengthened our bonds. The children, with their innocent wisdom, had taught us valuable lessons about acceptance and unconditional love. And although we know the road ahead is long and full of challenges, the certainty that we are together makes everything seem more possible. As I turned off the living room lights, I felt a deep peace. Life, in its complexity, offers us moments of learning and growth if we are willing to embrace them. And in that moment, I knew we were ready for any challenge the future might bring, because the love that united us was stronger than any doubt or fear. If this story brought any comfort or reflection, it's because, deep down, we all seek to understand and be understood. And if you saw yourself in any of these moments, know that you are not alone. Each family's journey is unique, but love is universal. For more stories that touch the heart, there's another one in the cards. Good night. The next morning, as the sun lazily stretched over the horizon, bringing with it the freshness of a new day, the house began to come to life. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, blending with the gentle smell of pancakes that my wife used to make. The children's laughter echoed through the living room, bringing a sense of normalcy and comfort. During breakfast, my youngest daughter, with her eyes gleaming with curiosity, asked if we could visit the library over the weekend. She had become interested in a story about animals she had heard at school and wanted to read more about it. "Of course we can go," I replied, admiring her enthusiasm for discovery and learning. The library has always been a special place for our family. The tall shelves, filled with books of all kinds, seemed to hold secrets and adventures on every page. It was a space where our daughters could explore new worlds and feed their imaginations. As we walked through the aisles, my wife and I discussed how literature can be a powerful tool for strengthening family bonds. "Have you ever gone through this?" I asked, recalling how my own childhood had been marked by the stories my father read to me. Stories that taught me about courage, friendship, and unconditional love. My wife smiled, remembering her own experiences, and we realized that we were offering our daughters a heritage rich in values and meanings. Back in reality, while the children picked out their books, my wife and I had a moment to reflect on what truly matters. This point deserves our attention, I thought, realizing that amidst the difficulties, we were building a legacy of love and understanding for our daughters. Later, as we headed back home, the car was filled with animated conversations about the chosen books. My eldest daughter, with a smile on her face, talked about a tale that had captured her imagination. It was a story about a little bird finding its place in the world, despite all adversities. "It reminds me a bit of our story," she said, and my heart filled with pride at seeing her ability to connect the narratives with her own life. When we got home, the day was still clear, and we decided to spend the rest of the afternoon in the backyard, enjoying the sun and the gentle breeze. The children played, laughing and running, while my wife and I watched, sitting on the porch. "If you've experienced something similar, you know what I'm talking about," she commented. And I knew she was referring to the sense of peace that comes from knowing we're doing our best for our family. As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the children began to calm down, tired from their play. Night fell, bringing with it the coolness of the evening breeze. The stars began to appear, one by one, lighting up the sky with their distant glow. Sitting there under the starry sky, my wife and I reflected on the day and how, sometimes, the answers to the most complex questions come in the simplest forms. "Have you thought about this before?" she asked, looking at me with a tender smile. And I knew we were in sync, understanding that life, with all its nuances, offers us precious moments of connection and understanding. When we finally put the children to bed, they were exhausted but happy. My eldest daughter, before closing her eyes, called me. "Daddy, will you tell me a story?" she asked softly. I sat beside her, and as I began the narrative, I realized that these little traditions were what really mattered. Later, after the children fell asleep, my wife and I sat together, appreciating the silence and tranquility of the house. We talked about the challenges and joys of raising a family, about how each day brings new lessons and opportunities to grow and connect. And so, as the night wore on, we allowed ourselves to just be present, grateful for everything we had built together. We knew the road was still long, but we also knew that, with love and understanding, we could face any challenge. And that, more than anything else, was what gave us the strength to keep going. If this story made you reflect, know that everyone's journey is unique, but love and connection are universal. For more stories that touch the heart, there's another one in the cards. Good night. The next morning, I woke up to the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows, a natural invitation to a more introspective day. The world outside seemed to move at a slower pace, and I took this moment to reflect on everything we had experienced in the past few days. I kept thinking about how each small challenge had brought us closer as a family, and how these moments were opportunities for us to grow together. While I was making coffee, my wife came into the kitchen, still wrapped in a blanket, and gave me a warm smile. It was one of those smiles that say, "We're in this together," without needing words. "Have you ever thought about how it all started?" she asked, referring to our journey as a family. I nodded, recalling how each choice had brought us to this point, and how each challenge had made us stronger. The children soon joined us, still sleepy, but excited for the day. The rain, which could have been a reason to stay indoors, turned into an opportunity to create new memories. We decided it would be the perfect day to set up an improvised camp in the living room, with blankets, pillows, and a flashlight to light up our stories. As we set up our little indoor adventure, I noticed how excited the children were. It was a simple, yet genuine joy that reminded me of the importance of finding happiness in the small things. My youngest daughter, with a sparkle in her eyes, suggested that each of us tell a story, and I knew it would be a perfect opportunity to share more about our origins and experiences. I started by telling a story from my childhood, one about courage and friendship that my own father used to tell me. As I spoke, I felt the attentive eyes of my daughters, absorbing every word. If you have ever experienced something similar, you know what I'm talking about, I thought, remembering how these stories shaped my view of the world and helped me understand the value of relationships. My wife was next to share, telling a story about her grandmother, about resilience and love. The children listened intently, amazed at the idea that their grandparents had their own adventures and challenges. This point deserves our attention, I thought, realizing that we were not just telling stories, but also passing on a legacy of values and experiences. When it was the children's turn, they took turns telling stories full of imagination and creativity. They were tales of talking animals, magical worlds, and brave heroes. Each story was unique, but they all shared the essence of childhood innocence and purity. Many people feel exactly this, even without knowing, I reflected, noticing how these narratives reinforce the importance of imagination in a child's development. The day flew by, amidst laughter and stories. As the afternoon turned into evening, it was still raining, but there was a special warmth at home, a warmth that came from the love and connection we were building. We decided to end the day with a special dinner, a simple meal, but prepared with care and attention. While we were at the table, my wife looked at me and said, "These moments are precious, aren't they?" I agreed, feeling that, despite all the uncertainties, we were building a solid foundation of love and understanding for our daughters. It's worth reflecting on this, I thought, realizing that deep down, what really matters are the relationships we cultivate and the love we share. After dinner, while putting the children to bed, my eldest daughter asked, "Daddy, will you one day tell me all the stories in the world?" I smiled, knowing that while I couldn't promise all the stories, I could guarantee that I would always be there to share the ones that matter most. And I will be here to listen to them, I responded, feeling the depth of that commitment. Later, my wife and I sat again on the couch, contemplating the silence that now filled the house. If this story brought any comfort or reflection to you, it's because deep down, we all seek to understand and be understood, I thought, grateful for everything we had built together. We knew that we would still have many challenges ahead, but we also knew that with love and patience, we could face anything the future held for us. If this story touched you, perhaps it's time to reflect on the bonds that truly matter in your life. And if you want to follow more stories like this, there's already another one in the cards. Good night. The next morning, the sun finally appeared, dissipating the clouds that had covered the sky the previous day. The soft glow flooded the kitchen, creating dancing patterns on the floor as I prepared the coffee. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the smell of pancakes my wife was baking, bringing a warm and welcoming start to the day. The children came down the stairs, their hair still tousled from a good night's sleep. There was something special in the air, a sense of renewal and hope that seemed to permeate every corner of the house. As we sat down for breakfast, my wife suggested an outdoor outing. "Let's take advantage of the sun and have a picnic," she proposed, and the children cheered with joy at the idea. While we were packing the picnic basket, I put in some of the books we had picked up from the library. I thought about how wonderful it would be to read to the children under the shade of a tree, sharing stories while the wind blew softly. "Does this remind you of any situation?" my wife asked as she placed fresh fruit in the basket. I smiled, recalling the picnics of my own childhood, when the simplicity of a day outdoors was enough to create lasting memories. We arrived at the park, and the scene was perfect. Blue skies, green grass, and trees swaying in the wind. The children ran ahead, already searching for the best spot to lay out the blanket. My wife and I followed behind, watching their energy and enthusiasm. "If you've experienced something similar, you know what I'm talking about," she commented, and I felt a deep gratitude for these simple moments that brought us together. After we settled in, we began to explore the books we had brought. My eldest daughter chose a story about a boy who discovered a magical world in his backyard. As I read aloud, the children drew closer, enchanted by the words painting vivid pictures in their minds. For a moment, it was as if we were all immersed in that world of fantasy, completely forgetting the time. While the children played, my wife and I talked about how reading could open doors to new perspectives and lessons. "It's worth reflecting on that," she said, remembering how books had played a fundamental role in our own upbringings. We agreed that encouraging this love of reading in our daughters was one of the greatest gifts we could give them. With the sun slowly moving across the sky, we decided to take a walk in the park. The children ran ahead, laughing and exploring every corner, while my wife and I walked side by side, enjoying the tranquility of the day. "Have you ever thought about this before?" she asked, referring to how the small adventures of daily life can teach us so much about life. I nodded, realizing that it's often these moments that truly shape who we are. When we returned to our spot in the park, the day was already beginning to say goodbye, but there was still time for one more story. This time, it was my wife who read a tale about a girl who, with courage and determination, overcame her fears. The children listened attentively, absorbing the message of resilience and hope. Many people feel exactly this, even without knowing, I thought, as I saw the sparkle of understanding in their eyes. Finally, as the sun began to set, we decided it was time to head home. On the way back, the car was filled with animated conversations and laughter, a perfect soundtrack to close the day. The children, exhausted but happy, dozed off in the back seat, and my wife and I exchanged knowing glances, grateful for another well-lived day. When we got home, the evening routine began. The children went for their baths, and my wife and I started preparing dinner. As we chopped vegetables and talked about the day, I realized how these small daily rituals were actually the glue that held our family together. This point deserves our attention, I thought, reflecting on the importance of cultivating these moments of connection. After dinner, while we were putting the children to bed, my eldest daughter asked me for one more story before closing her eyes. I sat beside her and started telling a story I made up on the spot. One about adventures and discoveries, full of characters she knew and loved. "I like being your daughter," she said sleepily, and I felt my heart fill with love and gratitude. Later, when the house was finally quiet, my wife and I sat together on the couch, enjoying the moment of calm. If this story brought you any comfort or reflection, it's because deep down we all seek to understand and be understood, I thought, feeling the certainty that, despite the challenges, we were on the right path. We knew we would still have many days ahead of us, full of challenges and learning experiences. But that night, as the silence filled the house, there was a feeling of peace that surrounded us. It was as if each small moment, each laugh, and each shared story was weaving an invisible tapestry of love and understanding. The next morning, the sun shone brightly again, announcing another day full of possibilities. The children woke up early, excited for school, and the house quickly filled with life and movement. As I prepared breakfast, my mind wandered over the conversations we had had, about how we were shaping our own concept of family and how each day was a new opportunity to strengthen these bonds. My wife entered the kitchen with a smile, bringing with her a lightness that only she could convey. "Today is a good day to do something special," she said. And I agreed, thinking about how small surprises could make all the difference. We decided that in the afternoon we would pick up the kids early from school and take them to a local ice cream shop they loved. It was a simple gesture, but I knew it would create happy memories. During the day, while working, I couldn't help but feel a growing anticipation for the moment I would spend with my family. "Does this remind you of any situation?" I thought, remembering how my own parents made these small gestures that made my childhood magical. It was a reminder that sometimes it's the smallest things that leave the biggest marks. In the afternoon, I fulfilled the promise of picking up the kids early. Their faces lit up when they saw me, and the surprise of knowing we were going to the ice cream shop kicked off a flood of smiles and excitement. On the way there, the joy was palpable, and I felt grateful to be able to provide these moments for them. At the ice cream shop, while the kids chose their favorite flavors, my wife and I sat side by side, watching them with infinite affection. "If you've ever experienced something similar, you know what I'm talking about," she commented, as she saw the happiness in the girls' eyes. I nodded, feeling incredibly lucky to share these moments with my family. As the sun began to set, we returned home, with the kids still licking the last remnants of ice cream from their fingers. It was a day that, although simple, had become special because of the love and intention behind every gesture. We knew that these moments were the ones that really mattered, and that we were building a solid foundation of memories and values for our daughters. Later, after dinner, while the kids played in their room, my wife and I talked about the future, about the hopes and dreams we had for our family. "Have you ever thought about this before?" she asked, and I realized that while the future was uncertain, the certainty that we were together gave us the confidence to move forward. When it was time to put the children to bed, they were exhausted but happy. My youngest daughter, with her bright, curious eyes, asked if we could have more special days like that. "Of course," I replied, promising myself that I would always find ways to keep the magic alive in their lives. After they fell asleep, my wife and I sat on the sofa, sharing the comfortable silence that only two hearts in tune can experience. This point deserves our attention, I thought, reflecting on the importance of cultivating these moments of connection amidst the hustle and bustle of daily life. We knew there was still much to learn and many challenges to face, but we also knew that with love, patience, and understanding, we could overcome any obstacle. And as the night progressed, I felt a deep peace, knowing that we were on the right path, building a legacy of love and unity for our daughters. If this story brought you any comfort or reflection, it's because, deep down, we all seek to understand and be understood. And if you saw yourself in any of these moments, know that you are not alone. Every family's journey is unique, but love is universal. For more heartwarming stories, there's another one ready for you. Good night. The next morning, the house awakened to the gentle sound of birds singing outside, a perfect prelude to what promised to be another special day. As I prepared the coffee, I watched the sun filtering through the curtains, casting patterns of dancing light around the kitchen. It was one of those moments that remind us of how incredibly beautiful simplicity can be. The children came down the stairs, still a bit sleepy, but with that sparkle in their eyes that only mornings can bring. My youngest daughter, with the typical curiosity of her age, asked what we would do that day. My wife, always full of ideas, suggested a visit to the local museum. The girls loved exploring exhibitions, and I knew it would be a great opportunity to spend more time together, learning and having fun. As we got ready to leave, my mind wandered about how these shared experiences were shaping our family. Have you ever been through this? I thought, reminiscing about how my own parents valued these moments of learning outside the home. It was a tradition I was eager to pass on, knowing how important it had been to me. Upon arriving at the museum, we were greeted by a world of history and culture. The kids ran from one exhibit to another, marveling at the dinosaurs and fascinated by the stories of ancient explorers. As we walked through the halls, my wife and I exchanged knowing glances, feeling the joy of watching our daughters discover the world around them. During the visit, we stopped in front of a painting exhibit where the vibrant colors and intriguing shapes captured the girls' attention. Does this remind you of any situation? My wife asked, and I smiled, remembering the days we would spend hours drawing together at the kitchen table. It was incredible how art could connect generations, creating a bridge between the past and the present. Later, we sat down for a snack at the museum cafe. While the kids enjoyed their cupcakes, my wife and I reflected on the impact of these little adventures in our lives. It's worth reflecting on this, she said, considering how each experience was building a foundation of knowledge and values for our daughters. As the sun began to set, we decided it was time to head home. On the way back, the car was filled with animated conversations about everything we had seen and learned. The kids, exhausted but happy, nodded off in backseat. My wife and I exchanged glances, grateful for another well-lived day. Arriving home, the evening routine began. The children went to bathe, and my wife and I started preparing dinner. While chopping vegetables, we reflected on the small moments of the day that had made everything worthwhile. If you've ever experienced something similar, you know what I'm talking about, she commented, and I knew exactly what she meant. After dinner, while we were putting the children to bed, my oldest daughter asked me for one more story before closing her eyes. I sat next to her and began to tell a story I made up on the spot, one about adventures and discoveries, full of characters she knew and loved. I like being your daughter, she said sleepily, and I felt my heart fill with love and gratitude. Later, when the house was finally quiet, my wife and I sat together on the couch, enjoying the moment of calm. If this story brought any comfort or reflection to you, it's because deep down we all seek to understand and be understood. I thought, feeling certain that, despite the challenges, we were on the right path. We knew we still had many days ahead, full of challenges and lessons. But that night, as silence filled the house, there was a feeling of peace that surrounded us. It was as if every little moment, every laugh, and every shared story was weaving an invisible tapestry of love and understanding. The next morning, the sun shone brightly again, announcing another day full of possibilities. The children woke up early, excited for school, and the house quickly filled with life and movement. While preparing breakfast, my mind wandered over the conversations we had, how we were shaping our own concept of family, and how each day was a new opportunity to strengthen those bonds. My wife entered the kitchen with a smile, bringing with her a lightness that only she could convey. "Today is a good day to do something special," she said, and I agreed, thinking about how small surprises could make all the difference. We decided that in the afternoon we would pick up the kids early from school and take them to a local ice cream parlor they loved. It was a simple gesture, but I knew it would create happy memories. During the day, while working, I couldn't help but feel a growing anticipation for the moment I would spend with my family. This thinking about how small gestures can have a lasting impact. Sometimes it's these surprises that turn an ordinary day into something extraordinary. As I worked, the image of the children smiling at the ice cream parlor lingered in my mind, and I found myself reflecting on how these simple moments are often the ones that warm the heart the most. When the clock finally struck the time to pick up the kids, I felt an almost childlike enthusiasm. Seeing them coming out of school with their faces lit up with excitement filled my heart with joy. "Have you thought about this before?" I asked myself, realizing how their happiness was contagious, and how, in fact, these experiences were as important to me as they were to them. On the way to the ice cream parlor, the kids couldn't stop talking about their day at school, the small achievements and discoveries they had made. It was as if each day brought new adventures, and I was grateful to be able to share in it. My wife, sitting beside me, smiled as she listened to the stories, and I knew she was feeling the same warmth in her heart. Arriving at the ice cream parlor, the sweet aroma of waffles and ice cream immediately surrounded us. The kids ran to the counter, eager to choose from the colorful flavors that awaited them. While they savored each spoonful, my wife and I took the opportunity to connect, talking about the day and the little joys it brought us. "If you've ever experienced something similar, you know what I'm talking about," she commented, and I agreed, feeling the depth of those moments that, although simple, are full of meaning. After the ice cream, we decided to take a walk in the nearby park, enjoying the soft light of the evening. The children ran ahead, their laughter echoing around us, and my wife and I walked side by side, savoring the tranquility of the scene. It's worth reflecting on this, I thought, observing how love and unity create a solid foundation for any family. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, we knew it was time to head home. On the way, the children dozed off, tired but happy, and my wife and I exchanged knowing glances, grateful for another well-lived day. When we arrived, the nighttime routine began, and as we prepared dinner, we reflected on how these small moments of connection are essential for building lasting bonds. After dinner, as we put the children to bed, my eldest daughter asked me for one more story before closing her eyes. I sat next to her and began to tell a magical story about a distant kingdom where courage and friendship were the greatest virtues. "I like being your daughter," she said sleepily, and I felt my heart fill with love and gratitude. Later, when the house was finally quiet, my wife and I sat together on the couch, enjoying the moment of calm. If this story brought any comfort or reflection to you, it's because, deep down, we all seek to understand and be understood, I thought, feeling the certainty that, despite the challenges, we were on the right path. That night, before going to sleep, my wife and I talked about the future, about the dreams we had for our family, and about how each day brought us closer to those goals. "Have you ever thought about this before?" she asked. And I realized that, although the future was uncertain, the certainty that we were together gave us the confidence to move forward. As the night advanced, I felt a deep peace, knowing that we were building a legacy of love and unity for our daughters. We knew that there would still be many days ahead, full of challenges and learning experiences, but we had the tranquility of knowing that we were on the right path. If this story brought you any comfort or reflection, it's because deep down, we all seek to understand and be understood. And if you saw yourself in any of these moments, know that you are not alone. The journey of each family is unique, but love is universal. For more heart-touching stories, there's another one waiting in the cards. Good night. The next morning, I woke up to the aroma of fresh coffee filling the kitchen, a promise of another day full of possibilities. While preparing breakfast, I reflected on the importance of cultivating simple and meaningful moments with those we love. Have you ever experienced this? I thought, remembering how these everyday gestures can strengthen bonds and create lasting memories. The children came down the stairs, their laughter filling the house with life and joy. My wife, always with a welcoming smile, suggested that we spend the day exploring a new park that had opened in the city. The girls burst with excitement, eager for new adventures. In the park, while the children ran and played, my wife and I walked hand in hand, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. "If you have ever lived through something similar, you know what I'm talking about," she commented, and I, grateful for every moment shared. We knew that together we could face any challenge and continue building a legacy of love and unity for our family. Before you leave, do two things now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive upcoming messages. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. To continue, watch the next video. It's already in the cards and also in the description.